So this is Michael Donohue's 182-48012 explanation video for the experiment process that will be taking place in the class lesson. For this experiment is for the EY 4066 module, and basically I'm just going to explain exactly what will happen in the experiment process. So first of all, to mention, there will be 4 experiments taking place in the class lesson. So they'll be guided and supervised massively by the teacher, and every step will be taken with advice of the teacher. So there's 4 there's a few plasterboards that's mentioned in my dry lining practices and principles lesson. We mentioned a few of them in the first lesson, but in the second lesson now, which is today, we are talking more in depth with the plasterboard with the dry lining. So we're going to look at the plasterboards that could be used for the dry lining. So first of all, you have there's a few of them mentioned in the class, and we are going to, there's 4 of them that we picked for this lesson, for this experiment. So the first one is method 1. So it is water resistant board. So for the water resistant board, there's a video on YouTube that is very similar to it. But basically what will happen is that the students will be advised and guided through the experiment. And what will happen through the experiment for this particular plasterboard is that both a group will receive one normal plasterboard, which is a ball board, and also a water resistant board. So what they'll be asked to do is basically pour water over both boards. Now it'll either be that, or they can sit them into the water themselves. Okay, so I'll give them guidance, but I'll expect them to kind of say, look, this will actually work better if we sit them into the water, let them soak it up, see if they can soak it up, see which board soaks up more, or see which board actually resists the water more. So obviously you'd be expecting the water resistant board would obviously be more water resistant than the normal board. So that's the first experiment. Okay, so now that could be done over a process. It might have to be done over a few days, not particularly in the lesson, but it'll start and it'll kind of be set up for in the first lesson. Now on to the second method, which is fireboard. Now particularly in this one needs to be highly supervised. It's a board now that could be wiped out of this experiment, but potentially it'd be a very interesting one to see for the students firsthand, to see what's happening with the fireboard and what a fireboard actually kind of consists of. So this one in particular will be just used, it'll be a safe, hopefully it'll be done outside. I was hoping that there'd be a double doors out to like maybe a yard or something off the construction studies lab room, which would be expected anyways, and also that they'd be able to sit out there and I'd be watching them from I'd be supervising them through the process of it. So basically they'd put a match up against a extra long match up against both boards and see which one resists the fire, the heat more than each other. So you just compare the two of them. Moving on, then you'd have method 3, which is acoustic board. So acoustic board is obviously trying to resist the sound, so the transfer of sound, so to avoid that. So basically what they'll be expected to do, this one will be more hands-on. I'd expect obviously if you have a group of 4, a group of 2 and a group of 2 out of the group, entire group would go away and they'd make a box out of the normal board, which is one board, and the other group would make a box out of the acoustic board. Bear in mind, one side has to be left accessible so that you can put in an alarm clock, put in a phone, put in a whatever sound device you expect to use yourself. So this is, again, I'll expect students to figure it out, maybe compare different things, so such as maybe use a phone for music, or maybe use an alarm clock. That will be totally up to themselves. I want to give my students much leadway as possible, that they can kind of decide for themselves, but with the guidance of myself. Okay, so that is that one, and they'll compare the two boards to see which one allows more transfer of sound, which you'd be expecting it'd be the normal board, obviously, because acoustic board would be trying to avoid that. And then the final one is the impact board, right? So the impact board is obviously is trying to, it's supposed to resist daily knocks. So you're bumping into a wall, maybe they're hitting it off a table, hitting it off a chair, that sort of stuff. So this one, I'm going to also, this is very kind of up to the students. They decide themselves what they think is best. How could they change up this experiment a small bit for themselves? Maybe see it, adapt to different things, see if they can change it up a small bit. So basically, this one is what I'd expect, is my kind of thoughts, is that you'd have two edges. You put your normal plasterboard and your impact board on the two edges, so you'd have the gap in the middle, and then you'd expect to put on maybe weights. So if you had disc weights or plate weights, and sit them on top, so you'd start gradually one by one on top of each other on top of the board, and see which one droops more. Hopefully that you'd expect more so that impact board would be less impacted than the normal board. But that is one way. You could also then maybe get a few minor sharp objects, so like maybe your chisels, not your chisels, your screwdrivers and stuff like that, and maybe just pair off the sides of that lightly, so just to see which one it gets more damage with different objects. Okay, so that is basically the 4 experiments that could be taking place in the class lesson, supervised by a teacher.